Hi again. I thought you might like to see the process for the piece I did in October? No, November. It's been a while. I made a Mothman illustration based on the Zesty Does Things prompt for the Creature Feature prompt series. So if you haven't realized it, I do those a lot. I like prompts. I find they're a good way to get creative without putting too much pressure on myself. And if you follow Zesty Does Things on any of his socials, you can basically join in every month to a different monster prompt. Usually it's a mythical creature. Sometimes it's sort of like a build your own monster. He'll give like a paragraph prompt of features or a mood that he wants you to try and capture, and you can create based off of that. But for November, he posted the prompt was Mothman, and I think the Mothman's a really cool concept. I don't know too much about Mothman, even though I did live in West Virginia for a while, so technically I should, but I know more about John Henry than I do the Mothman. But I thought it'd be fun to kind of make a cute little squishy Mothman. I think just because I also tend to like making things cute and squishy. So in this case, I thought it'd be fun to do little squishy Mothmen based off of specific moths. And so I sat down and I started sketching, and pretty quickly I was like, I don't want any arms, I just want little leggies, and I want the wings. And at that point I decided to just kind of focus down on what kind of moth do I want to combine it with. Do I want to do this big fur cuff around the shoulders, kind of like some moths are really fuzzy? Do I want to do moths with little antennas, big antennas? And then as I was doodling, I came up with the idea of having two moths together, or two moth folk. And I'm going to say moth folk from now on just because they're not, I mean, there is a Mothman, and I feel like these are the same like species as the Mothman, but they're not the Mothman. And then that way they can also be any gender you like if you want to make them an analog for you and your partner or something like that. Spoiler alert, in canon they're a couple. They were roommates. So I finally settled on doing, because I kind of wanted to make two different looking ones that were together in illustration, so I settled on a Death's Head moth. Death's Head hawk moth, I think is the full name of them. Anyways, I always thought they were really cool looking. They're these browns and yellows and blacks, and then they have the little skull pattern on their back. So that was the moth I wanted facing away from the viewer so that you could see the little skull. And then I chose the other one because I thought it'd be really cute to put them as a couple, was the rosy maple moth, which is a moth that is in my area, and I've seen a couple. They're very cute, and they're very fluffy, and they're bright pink and yellow. They're so cute. Because we have maple trees, so I don't see them every year, but I do see them now and then when they come up to my property to just sort of chill after they're done doing their fun seasonal activities, if you know what I mean. So I made that one facing forward because I don't really have any interesting patterns per se. They're just sort of very interesting colors. And in my research looking at both of these moths, I was trying to figure out ways to make them also look different beyond just the coloration of them. So the Death's Head moth, they have little skinny antennas with like a tip that's a different color than the rest, and the rosy maple moth have those big bushy antennas. The rosy maple moth is also a lot more fluffy, so I gave it that big fur cuff, while I made the Death's Head moth have a little bit less fluff and a little more streamlined look almost. I mean, they're still little fat moth people, so these moth folk aren't super reliant on their original moth source. But yeah, I tried to do some things to make them different. I also was focusing on the wing shapes, so like the Death's Head moth had those smaller subset of wings that had like the little kink in them, or divot or whatever, and then the rosy maple moths had more of a scalloped edge on their larger wings, so I added that as well. And while I was painting this, I mean, you're looking straight down, but my art desk is off to the side of my art room, so I had both the references pulled up on my computer so I could just look over and take a peek and make sure my colors were close enough to what I wanted, things like that. And I primarily use my beam paint sets, but I kind of mix some of my koi travel kit into them too to kind of dirty them up a little bit. Just because the beam paints are so pigmented that sometimes it's hard to, I found it's hard to make them look grungy. So I had my, off camera, I had my koi set that I was using to kind of muddy some of them up. I also added some of the, it's like a neon yellow in my koi set. I added that to the yellow from the beam paint for the rosy maple moth just to make it a little less earthy, and a little more neon colored. It sort of worked. I mean, looking at it now, they don't look too different, but when they dry down, it's a little bit of a different color. And then, yeah, I did the whole death's head moth with one base coat of that yellow, that like earthy yellow that I was hoping to layer on top of with browns and stuff like that. I know the beam paints layer pretty well, as long as I give it enough time to actually dry down, because I have noticed if I don't wait for it to dry down, they do lift really easily, but that's not a bad thing. That's probably what you want them to do. I'm just used to my cheap kois that dry really fast and stick really well, which is both good and bad, but I've just learned how to work with it. So the beam paints I find layer nicely if I'm using my head and thinking about my piece as a whole. And so then I went in with the pink. This pink I actually mixed with I have a fountain pen ink, like a calligraphy ink that I picked up from my local art store. It's like a bright magenta. I realized I didn't think I could mix a magenta very well. I'm not that confident in my abilities to mix the not color. So I went and took that bright magenta pink ink, and then I sort of watered that down so I could just keep layering it. This one does lift very easily. It's designed to be completely water soluble because it's supposed to go in a pen for writing, not necessarily directly for art. So I kind of had to be purposeful with where I put it down and know that if I was going to layer it, I had to basically like flood fill it, not brush it too much, because it would just lift and pull back off. So I went in with this bright pink and did a layer all over everything. The wings, the muff collar, fluff, and the face. I left the eyes for later because the rosy maple moth eyes are just little black eyes. They don't have brightly colored eyes, but it's a fun color. I've used it before in a few other pieces. The only other issue with it is it's not like archival, so while the watercolors would probably not fade, at least not quickly, in light, the pen ink I think does. So I've kept anything I've done with it like safely put away, and then if I was ever going to hang it up, I would put it just out of direct sunlight and let it, do its thing. And then the neat thing I did for the browns too is I knew I had this really nice, I basically just made it a multimedia piece, I guess. I had this really nice earthy brown watercolor brush pen thing that I'd gotten in actually it might have been an ink pen water brush, I don't know. It's something I got in a sketch box years ago when I was still getting them regularly, and it's a very nice brown. I know it layers down really nicely, and I know it sticks, so I wanted to use that, and it was like the exact color brown that the Death's Head Moth was on my screen. So I put that in my palette and I watered it down a little bit so I could layer it up instead of having it be really, really dark. And then I kind of went in, I outlined, just like watercolor, as long as I kept it wet, I was able to add to it, move it around, and stuff like that. So I drew the little skull first, like outlined it, and then filled it in. You can see the light through my window is not super reliable, and I didn't wait for clear light. I was having fun, so I said screw it. And then I tried to recreate here on the wings. I don't know if you follow Rozenn Illustrations, and there's a few other artists I've seen who do this, where they do these really beautiful watercolor and ink washes, and they do like wet on wet to get this like nice blooming rough texture, and usually they go again over like this with another firm handed like darker strokes, and then they go in with bleach. They use ink, I know that, and they go in with bleach to make like these golden hues. It's beautiful. I wasn't gonna go in with bleach, but I like the idea of making this mottled underlayer by wet washing with this, and then I went in and tried to add the wing details. The second wing turned out much better because the first wing I did the scalloped edges before I did the the main veins bars that went through the wing and then building the scallops on those. So the second wing I did the veins first and then built the scallops, and that was significantly easier and I think had a better result, but that's fine. Not everything is perfect, and I still like the way it turned out as a whole. And then here I went over and I did the eye, and you'll see I didn't wait for this to dry the first time I tried to layer it up again, and there was a spot where I like pulled it up, but here I was trying to just kind of again give that kind of variegated texture by just dropping some darker stuff in, and I think I ended up just filling it fully because I knew it was going to all dry down the same tone, so there's no point. And so there, yeah, I went to put more color in, and all I did was just lift what I'd already put down. So I had to tap in some more color and just not touch it for a minute. So instead I went and worked on other parts of the piece. It's a great way to keep yourself patient if you're waiting for something to dry down before you can finish a big part of your piece. Just find details that need to be worked on and start working on those instead. So like I did this little circle behind them of hearts and fall colored leaves and things like that, and little sparkly stuff, because I don't know, I thought it was cute. I thought I'd add a little something else to it, and it was fun painting these little leaves, basically lineless little background elements. And these I was again back to mixing. I was using my colors I already had, and I mixed in some more of my beam paints. I had that pumpkin color from them that I was mixing with the leftover yellows, and try my best just to make some interesting little colored leaves. I had to again wait for these to dry to do it, but I went in back and went and did like the little veins in the leaves, and put little spots of different colors to try and give them some more depth, little dots and circles and stars. I don't know, I was just having a lot of fun filling in this piece with just stuff. So here you see I've let everything dry enough. Basically it was drying as I was painting it because it's all small enough stuff. So I was able to actually go back in and add details as I went. There's a few spots where it's still a little wet, so I had to wait. But also, if you like my cauldron mug, I got it from a local artist in Halifax. I'll try and find their name. I bought it years ago, but I can try and find their name and put that in the description underneath. I'll also put links to beam paints and maybe an Amazon link to the koi set I use. Again, the koi set is a good starter kit, honestly, but it's if you want some really nice paints, I'd say get a primary set from a place like Beam Paints, or even just go to your local art store and ask. Not Michael's necessarily. If you have a small art store, they'll be really good at finding something for you that's a good price, good quality, and possibly made locally, which is nice. But yeah, I went back in then and did the eyes, so I added another layer onto the Rosy Maple Moth's eyes to give it that like lighter spots and then the darker inner part. I thought that would look cute. And then, because I had to wait for everything to dry before I could erase anyways, I actually bothered to sign this, which means I might actually put it up for sale at some point. I do plan soon in the new year to make a few storefronts. I'm going to be making an imprint, as well as possibly loading some designs onto Society 6 for physical merch, and then having my own store personally for prints, or not prints, sorry, originals, and see where we go from there. Anyways, I hope you liked my illustration and my process, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!